What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Rats Report. It is time to talk about the Toronto Raptors because they have announced a couple of signings, and we are going to be breaking these players down for you in today's video. So if you're ready to watch, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you wish, you hit the subscribe button as well. That would be very much appreciated. And you want to stay till the end of the video. I've come up with trivia questions once again. Life has been a little bit busy for me, so just haven't had the opportunity to make many videos, let alone come up with trivia questions as well. So you definitely want to stay in tune for that. So with that being said, guys, let's get into today's video. The Toronto Raptors announced on their Twitter account that they have signed Jarrett Roden to a contract. It is a 10-day exhibit contract. For those that aren't familiar with what that contract means, essentially allows players like Jarrett to come to the Raptors camp and fight for the final roster spot. The Toronto Raptors have one roster spot open, and they did sign Bruno Fernando as well. And similarly to what they've done in the past, so sign a handful of players and they'll really make them work for that last roster spot, almost like a gladiator style, a triple threat match. Who winner comes out on top. They signed a bunch of other guys as well. But in terms of Jarrett, let's talk about him because not a lot of people are familiar with his name, and not a lot of people are familiar with him at all and what he could potentially bring to the Toronto Raptors. So Jarrett is a 24-year-old shooting guard. He is going to be 25 by the end of this month. He's listed at 6'6". Without shoes, he's listed at 6'4". He weighs around 210 pounds. His wingspan, though, is absolutely insane for someone at 6'4". Again, remember, minus shoes. With shoes, he's 6'6". He has a 6'11 wingspan, which kind of just goes with what Masai Ujiri always looks for in players is guys that have long wingspans. Now, this will help him quite a bit, and I'll mention it in a minute later, but let's talk about Jarrett and let's talk about his offense because not a lot of people are familiar with what he can do on the offensive side, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. So talking about Jarrett's offensive game, he's quite impressive. Again, that wingspan really comes into play because it allows him to dribble the ball, also allows him to get past players. It's hard to explain, but when you really watch basketball players, and let's use shorter point guards, for example. Let's remember former Raptor Malachi Flynn. That wingspan really doesn't allow you to dribble that much because there's only so much space you can dribble the ball with. You got a shorter wingspan. So for someone like Jarrett, it really allows them to think of someone like a Paul George. Think of someone like a Paul George when he dribbles the ball, how far he can get the ball out when he's dribbling with that long wingspan of his as well. So Jarrett is quite an interesting player on the offensive side. One skill set he does have is isolation scoring, which is so rare to find for role players around the NBA, but particularly for a team like the Toronto Raptors, which let's be honest, they don't have a lot of isolation scores on this team. They have a couple of good ones. You could argue, RJ Bird is good, but mostly his isolation involves attacking the basket. But Emmanuel quickly, Scotty Barnes, obviously, but they don't have a ton, right? So that's what makes it challenging for a team like the Raptors. When you have role players come off the bench and play with the starters, the difficulty with a lot of teams is that when you have role players that are only able to shoot threes, that are only able to cut off the ball, when starters get doubled, then all of a sudden role players are kind of stuck because they can't really either dribble the ball or they can't shot create. But for someone like Jarrett, he'll have no issue doing that. He's a great isolation scorer. He can also pull up with the three as well. He can dribble the ball, pull up for a three. He can hit step back threes as well as catch and shoot threes, which is a good sign, for again, assuming he'll be a role player for now. If he does crack the Raptors roster spot, he'll obviously spend some time in the G League. But on terms of his offense, he can attack the basket. He can dribble the ball. He can pull up for jump shots or mid-range shots. That is a luxury to have. When you think of guys that are able to create shots for themselves that weren't superstars, that weren't starters, you think of someone like a Lou Will. There's a reason why he won so many six man of the year because he is able to shot create for himself. He was able to score in isolation as well. So it's going to be really exciting to have someone like Jarrett here because he can do a lot of those similar things as well. And I'm personally excited. He's still very young to the point where you can bring him in your system. If he does crack the roster spot, he can develop a little bit. And then, with Darko, he's going to give guys an opportunity, and particularly with the Raptors season this year, they got a lot of rookies playing. So there's definitely opportunities there if, he does crack the roster spot. But let's talk about his defense as well. So when we talk about Jarrett's wingspan, this is where defense comes into play. Again, there's only so many highlights because he hasn't been in the NBA for too long. But in terms of his defense, he seems like he really has the ability to play much larger than his size. So one player I constantly have mentioned in the past when we talk about players that play bigger than their size is Norman Powell. Norman Powell was also listed at 6'4", but you wouldn't think so with the way he played. He played like he was 6'6", 6'7". He guarded bigger players as well, and it's similar to Jarrett. He's got the he's got the body type, he's got the wingspan, he's got the positioning as well. He's also a really good shot blocker, which is a good ability to have. Anytime you're not a center or power forward and you're able to block a ton of shots, that's a good ability to have. He blocks shots similarly to how you see with Scotty Barnes, which is help defense and comes out of nowhere. And again, those long arms of Jared really help him get those shots. Really helps him really block those shots as well. Is he going to be a rim protector? Of course not. But he's also done a great job of just coming out of nowhere and getting some massive blocks as well. So I like Jared in that sense. But let's talk about some of his stats as well, just to kind of give you an idea of what he looked like the last couple seasons. So Jared played with the Detroit Pistons, and as you see, his first season, as 23 years old, he didn't really do much. His field goal percentage wasn't great, 38% on 3.1 attempts. His three-point shot only on 1.4 attempts per game, he shot 25%. His free throws, again, very limited attempts, but in terms of his rebounds, 2.6 rebounds, 0.3 assists a game, 0.3 steals a game, 0.1 blocks a game, 3.2 points per game is what he averaged in 14.1 minutes with the Detroit Pistons. Now, last season, he played similar amount of games, almost similar. He played 3 more games with the Pistons. He played 17 games, average about the same minutes, 14.4 minutes as opposed to 14.1 the previous season. His field goal attempt went up a small amount, 3.9 attempts, but he shot the ball a lot better. You see the improvements that he made last season, which were huge. He shot the ball 50% from the field. He took 1.3 attempts, 8 attempts from the 3-point line, averaged 38.7% from the line. And again, it gets better when you look at his stats as well, right across the board. His blocks went up a lot, and that's what I was talking about. He's learning to use his body more. 0.8 blocks per game, only 14.4 minutes, right? Again, quite impressive for someone his size at the shooting guard position. Rebounds, it is what it is. Again, it comes with opportunity depending on the players you're playing with. 0.8 assists per game. He'd also upped his points a lot too. 4.9 points per game may not seem very impressive to stat nerds out there, but we need to keep in mind 14.4 minutes isn't a ton. Again, it's not a ton, so good for him for getting the point production. But I do want to give a larger sample size, which is why we'll be taking a look at his G League stats here. So when we talk about his G League stats, it gives a much bigger picture because not only are they playing more minutes, they're getting more touches. So throughout the couple of seasons, as you see, his first season in the G League, he averaged 18.1 points, right? Field goal percentage was pretty respectable, 46.9%. Shot the three-point ball well on 5.1 attempts, right? 37.4. His free throws were impressive at 85.1%. Did a really good job. Again, that's what I talk about when I talk about wingspans. You look at the rebounds, there are 7.2 rebounds a game, 2 assists a game, 1.1 steal a game as well. Now, fast forward to last season in the G League, he averaged 20.9 points per game, which is really impressive. He took 17.4 field goal attempts, which is a ton, shot about 44.2% from the field, took 6.8 attempts from the three-point line, 38.8%. Again, shot to the free throw ball a little bit, not as well as the previous season, but 81.4 is still quite impressive. 6.3 rebounds, 3 assists a game, 1.4 steals, 0.7 blocks a game. So kind of just gives you an idea of what he's able to do. He's kind of able to do a ton of a lot. He's also a really good scorer, and absolutely, look, the Raptors need him. And if he does crack the roster spot, which I think he has a really good chance of, do not be surprised if he becomes one of those players that a lot of people like myself and other Raptors YouTubers and even non-Raptors YouTubers start talking about how the Raptors have found a hidden gem. So again, he's going to be an amazing player wherever he gets the opportunity. I really hope the opportunity comes with the Toronto Raptors, but we'll see what happens. Let's talk about the other player the Raptors have announced. Well, they didn't technically announce it, but there's rumors online that the Raptors have announced another player today. And our second player here, again, take this with a grain of salt. I don't know how true this is. It was actually Arian Buller. If you're not familiar with who Arian is, he is actually the first Twitter account that I saw of reporting about Christian Coloco and how he's playing through, potentially making an NBA comeback. And then several weeks later, a lot of other well-known Twitter accounts were reporting that as well. But Arian Buller was reporting undrafted free agent center Dylan Disu has signed an Exhibit 10 deal with the Toronto Raptors. But then Aaron Rose was tweeting that there are conflicting reports about Toronto's last Exhibit 10 contract. Toronto has yet to confirm Disu or Quincy Guerrero. Officially, the roster spot is at 20 with one more spot to go. So again, take that with a grain of salt. I was actually just checking in what Arian has since deleted that tweet. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the Raptors have announced a signing. I don't know if they will as I'm recording this video right now. But let's talk about this player anyways, because it'll be fascinating because he does possess a very interesting skill set, which I believe the Raptors are trying to kind of really get into their roster for quite some time. So let's talk about him. So who is Dylan Dessou? He is listed as 6'9". He's listed as a forward. He played mostly center position in college. Again, he went undrafted this past draft, so he's listed as a forward. He could probably play the power forward position in the NBA. 220 pounds, so he's not a massive forward. As you see there, he spent 5 seasons in college. His best season coming in the second season, where he averaged 15 points, averaged 9.2 rebounds. You see there 1.2 blocks a game. Also shot the ball really, really well at 36% that season. But let's talk about his last season in college. He averaged 15.5 points per game, only 5 rebounds a game. Again, it's one of those players that's not going to average a ton of rebounds, even though he did in one of his college seasons. He averaged only 5 rebounds. He's not a terrific rebounder. He is, however, a really good shooter. And that's where I think the Raptors are really attractive. Anytime you find a power forward, a center, wherever he'll play in the NBA, the fact that he's able to shoot threes, like you see there, 45% on 3.6 attempts is absolutely insane for someone like Dylan. You know, a 46.5% from the field is impressive in itself. And he just seems like one of those players. Similarly, I don't want to compare him exactly to Jonte Porter, but similarly, in some ways, has similar style of how he plays the game in terms of he can hit jump shots, he can hit 3-point shots as well. But really impressive. You know, 1.3 steals, 1.1 block. That's quite impressive for someone his size. And when you talk about power forward, when you talk about centers for someone like a Dylan, he isn't your prototypical type of center. He's not someone that just shoots threes and can't do anything else, you know? So he's quite fascinating on the offensive side in that way. It's also quite interesting with Dylan is because he'll post up, but then he'll back his man down and then he'll take like a jump. He'll hit a mid-range, but he'll step back and hit a mid-range. He's also very good with on the offensive side anyways. When defenders are right in his face, they're getting physical, he'll play through that physicality. He hits jump shots when defenders are right in his face, but he just has a good way of creating a little bit of space, but also he's great at attacking the basket. And when I mean attacking the basket, I don't mean your traditional centers of where they just, you know, like Jakob Poeltl. I don't mean that. He's actually very versatile in the ways he finishes around the basket. Like you'll watch some of his highlights, you'll see that he looks like he's going to hit a layup and then he does a reverse layup, you know, with a pump fake or something crazy like that. It's almost like that NBA 2K player that you create that's 6'9", that's 6'10", but scores in such interesting ways you would think he's more of a small forward, you know? So quite interesting with someone like a Dylan. Again, there's not too many highlights of his defense, so I can't really speak on his defense too much. But again, you see the stats there, really impressive, and just the way the NBA has been trending. You need power forwards, you need centers to be able to shoot threes. So again, I don't know how much the rumors are true if the Raptors have signed him or not. Again, we'll see what happens, but an interesting player in Dylan, and I would absolutely love if the Raptors did invite him to camp and gave him an invite as well. So what do you think of these two players? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and I do have a trivia question for you today. And the trivia question is, which team drafted Jared Rhoden? Was it A, the Pistons? Was it B, the Jazz? Was it C, the Blazers? Or did he go undrafted? D. So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.